I'll bail out Micah and come in before that song gets too much further. Good. That is a good song, though, for this next segment we're coming into. We're going to address what that very song was talking about. But what I'd like to do is follow up a little bit on what we were talking about this last segment, this whole Syrian thing. Look at it from what I like to call, it's a libertarian point of view, but an original type of American ideal point of view. Now, a lot of people say that, well, libertarians are a bunch of peace-loving hippies. Well, I'll be the first to admit it. I enjoy peace. It's nice not to be at war, and that is the goal for which we need to strive. But that doesn't mean we don't have a strong military. But this military should only be used for defense of our country from attack. And even then, we still have to go to Congress to get a declaration of war. The president shouldn't be able to send our soldiers just anywhere he chooses without permission from Congress. Now, you'll say, well, some of you will say, a lot of you won't, but you'll say, hey, Patrick, we're the world's policemen. Well, no, we're not. Nowhere in our founding documents does it state that we are to be the world's policemen. In fact, our founders enjoyed being separated from all the craziness in Europe. And it's interesting to note, for me anyway, that a lot of these people screaming for intervention all over the world, they're a lot of the same people that are screaming for us to stay out of the world's business just a decade or two ago. We aren't the world's policemen because we don't have the money. We don't have the personnel. And more importantly, we don't have the permission from the Constitution. You see, if we're going to be the world's policemen, then we have to respond to every call for help, no matter how trivial. That's the role taken on by the police. You have to respond to all calls for help, not just the ones you want to answer, not just the ones where the state has a, quote, compelling interest. Otherwise, the government is picking and choosing winners and losers, something it is or it used to be restricted from doing. How would you feel if you called the police and they said, you know, we really don't care what happens in your neighborhood, so we're just not coming. Have a nice day. The unfortunate truth is that in some areas of this country, that's actually done. But it doesn't make it any more right than when we do it to another country, though. So what would you be left to do? Well, what do people do in some areas of the cities where the police either don't respond or take their time getting there? The people protect themselves through arming themselves, and things get taken care of on their own. The policeman role most politicians want our government to take on is really one of a highly trained security force, not police. They want a force they can send anywhere in the world for whatever reason they see fit. That's not the role of our military, or it shouldn't be anyway. If some dictator somewhere starts killing his rivals, starts eliminating people trying to kill him, if we aren't interested in that country, if there isn't any oil or minerals, then we aren't going to go help out. But if someone sneezes around an oil well in Saudi Arabia, we're there in a second. If an oil-rich country starts to collapse and it looks like the supply may be restricted or even cut off, look out. We're knocking on their door shortly. That's why our founders tried to ensure we had checks and balances in our system. The ultimate check being the right to vote. They wanted to be sure we had branches of government that would watch one another, fight with one another, keep each other honest. What this has become, though, is one big homogeneous leviathan that stretches out across the entire world. Not just our country, but the entire world. And this is the problem. This is why we need to vote out these people who are just sitting in Washington and enjoying their paychecks. As that excellent writer and libertarian Walter E. Williams noted once, if thievery is occurring, then it pays to be a thief. That's what's happening in Washington right now, people trying to get away with as much as they can, because they know no one is really watching what is going on. And how can we? Not even the government knows everything that is going on up there. There are whole departments that cannot be reliably audited because there are no internal controls, nothing to flag something is missing. But should I digress? Back to my point, we are not the world's policemen. If we want to take on that role, then we need to propose a constitutional amendment to allow it, and they could get the permission of all the countries who would like those services and work out a way those countries can pay us for policing them in their country. Otherwise, we need to keep our military home and keep it strong and keep it ready to respond to attack, but only when we're attacked. And watching all this that's going on there in Washington, especially with this IRS scandal that's come up and all this, the AP and just everything that's been coming up, everyone's making excuses and pointing fingers at each other. Do you ever stop to think about how juvenile and silly it really is? How embarrassing it is that we don't have one person, and if you females in the audience will excuse this phrase, one man who has the guts to stand up and take responsibility for what has been going on. Obama. That could be his nickname because he is drone striking and bombing people. But Obama, Holder, none of them are men. They are little sniveling wusses who sit up there in Washington trying to get away with much as they can. Oh, sure, they're tough and mean when it comes to ordering people under them around. When it comes to sending our soldiers overseas to back up the tough talk they do from all the way back in Washington, sure, they're so-called manly then. But when the rubber hits the road, you see what happens. If you want to find out someone's true colors, find out their character, what they're really made of, put them under pressure and see how they react. It's a tried and true method. Police academies use it. The military uses it. Even a lot of business schools use that tactic. When someone's whole fight or flight reaction starts kicking in, that adrenaline starts flowing, then we'll see what that person's leadership capabilities and abilities are. Do they step forward and take care of business, or do they cower behind other people, blame others for mistakes their organizations made? I didn't know, I wasn't aware of, those people were acting on their own. When you hear these types of things, what it's telling you is, I am too much of a pansy to take responsibility for the actions that are occurring. It's almost like you're watching a movie when you see coverage of government at all levels, federal all the way down to the local city council. A lot of the time it's like these people are asking you to suspend your disbelief. Stop questioning whether that could happen or not. Stop questioning whether what they're doing in the movie violates the laws of physics. Stop asking how these politicians couldn't have known about something going on right under their noses. Don't ask questions. Just sit back and enjoy the oppression, the nosiness, the busybodies in government wanting to run your life. That's what it's ultimately all about. If you look at the government's record, if you look at the timeline and how it has evolved, it makes it very easy to look down the road and see where it's heading. We're at the point on this government timeline where it is involved in literally almost every aspect of your life. Used to be you didn't have much contact with government. You took care of yourself. But that was our downfall. We stopped watching what it was doing. We lost that healthy suspicion of government. It has put on this robe of security and helping and providing. But underneath the robe is the tyranny, the oppression, the freedom and liberty robbing animal that dwells within all forms of government. If you'll stop and think about all this, you'll begin to understand I'm correct. Look around the world. Our government here in the United States seeks to control every country on the face of this planet. We are a global dominating force. Unfortunately, we are not using our power wisely. We are using it for the personal gain of the people in power and of the people funding those people in power. I have stories on two of those things right here in the stack if I get to them today. If not, you can go to our Facebook page and I'll stick them over there. The address for that is facebook.com/Patrick Riggins Show. You don't have to be a member of Facebook to view it either. Just type in facebook.com/Patrick Riggins Show. But back to my point, the government is just growing bigger and bigger every year. And if something continues growing, what does it do to everything else? Well, just like a wild plant in your flower bed, it will crowd everything else out. It will choke the other plants out. It takes away their water and nutrients, and eventually they die. Now, that's what's happening right now. The government's choking out private business. It is sucking up all the resources, all the money, and that's what both government and business use for life. Money's like food and water to us. So if government's pulling in more and more money, the sustenance for business, well, then eventually business is going to die. That's why our economy is tanking. That's why it's so hard for it to try and bounce back from the starvation that this government is inflicting on this economy. What this really do is just demonstrating the strength of American business and our economy to overcome just about anything. The fact that we are coming back a little. But as you can see, it's getting harder and harder to come back with the government getting so much bigger. Until one day, business just dies out and all we are left with is government. Now, some people will say I'm being fatalistic. Nope, I'm being realistic. Look at where we've been. Look at where we are. And look down the trend line. Follow that line out and see where it is heading. All right, we're up on the bottom of their break here on the Patrick Riggins Show. When we come back, we'll talk about that scandal a little bit and get in a couple other things in about 2 minutes. Join us.